Yo, what's up? Today, what we're going to do is a probiotic tier list. There's a lot of probiotics out there. Everyone just says, oh, this is probiotic, this is probiotic. Yeah, but how probiotic is it exactly? A lot of probiotics are just straight ass, as you can see from the tier list. I have a section for them. So we're going to go through and rank them all. Let's go. Let's get into it. First up is cheese. Moldy cheese, specifically Roquefort cheese. Now, most cheeses you find are actually going to be pretty terrible, but Roquefort cheese is actually a raw milk cheese, which means it's got a high bacteria content and it's been fermented for ages. As you can see, it's got all mold on it. So, I've actually consumed this multiple times and I actually do notice a good probiotic benefit to my gut. Although, it's hard to say whether that's because it actually has a high bacterial count or whether the nutrients in it are just what's soothing you. So it's actually kind of hard to rank it. I'd say it actually has, in terms of how many actual bacteria it has, it's actually quite low compared to some other things. But in terms of the benefit, I'd actually say it's pretty high. So I'm going to put it in the good, because it is quite good. It just not in the same way as the others. That's why I didn't put it in the best tier. It's extremely good. For example, one time I had diarrhea. Yeah, a lot of information, I know, but it actually helped a lot. So I had diarrhea, and then I consumed the Roquefort cheese, and within, I don't know, maybe even like minutes or even hours after having it, my gut felt soothed. And then a little after that, my diarrhea just went away. It's really good if you have any gut problems. Just have some of this cheese. It helps me a lot anyway. I can speak from experience. Next up, we've got kefir. Now, what do we know about kefir? Wait, this is specifically referring to milk kefir here. So dairy kefir. Well, it depends a lot. All of these probiotics actually depend on the brand. In every case, we'll assume that it's a good quality made one. Kefir is actually, it's pretty high. It's actually one of the highest probiotic probiotic foods out of this entire list. I think it might even be the highest. But again, it depends a lot on the brand. Some just don't have that much. Some even pasteurize it after they ferment it. So they ferment it and they build up the bacteria levels in the food. Then they cook it. And it just removes all the bacteria, so what's even the point? What are you doing? Well, you should be fired, sir. I'm actually going to put it in the best tier. I actually do notice a significant difference in my carbohydrate digestion when consuming kefir. And if you have it with raw milk, you won't have the acne issues that are brought on by consuming dairy. And even if it is pasteurized and you consume it, if you consume dairy products fermented, such as with kefir, it will be better. You won't have as much acne. You may not even get any acne at all, even, because the bacteria help break down the food and help your body digest it easier. So that's good. Next up is kimchi. Kimchi is made with fermented cabbage, chili, garlic, some other stuff, such as shrimp paste. What's added to it kind of varies depending on the recipe, but it's usually at least those things. How does it taste? Really freaking good. I love kimchi actually. It actually, compared to some other fermented foods, it's actually got a pretty high pretty high bacterial content, pretty high probiotic content. But it's not as good as kefir, because kefir is fermented lactose, which is the milk sugar. It's really easily accessible by the bacteria to ferment. The kimchi is fermenting the cabbage, which is pretty much just fiber and water, so it's harder for the bacteria to ferment it. But nevertheless, it is still pretty decent in terms of probiotics. You can taste, depending on the brand, if it's a good brand, you can actually taste like the fermented flavor. What is the fermented flavor? The legendary fermented flavor. It's kind of like imagine like a carbonated water kind of taste. It has like that kind of tang on your tongue. It's really weird. If you've ever had kefir, it's kind of tastes like carbonated yogurt. if it's a good quality one. So all in all, kimchi is actually quite good in terms of taste, in terms of everything. The only downside is that as a plant food, it can have some minor inflammatory issues for some people. It's not that bad though. Any food that's been fermented will be less inflammatory. I'd put in good. It's not the best because its bacteria content's not as high, but it's still pretty freaking good. And it's super easy. Some of these, like the moldy cheese, 90% of people probably won't even like that. They'll probably think it's disgusting and they'll hate eating it. Kimchi, most people will love kimchi, I reckon. It tastes like you're eating like a spicy sauce. It's really tasty. Next up, kombucha. Everyone knows kombucha. I think it's probably one of the most popular, widely consumed probiotics on this list, actually. What are the downsides of kombucha? It is made with tea, which contains caffeine. But the caffeine content of tea is actually not even that high to begin with. And when it's fermented, a lot of the caffeine is removed anyway. I think if you really want to, you can actually just make kombucha without tea at all, I think. But realistically, most people aren't going to do that. Most people have caffeine anyway, realistically, so is the caffeine even really a thing? Caffeine can cause some problems, like it can cause shakiness and jitteriness in some people, and it can also cause adrenal fatigue as well. But you won't be getting adrenal fatigue just from drinking kombucha, because of, like I was just saying, it's just not high enough in it. The bacterial content, any kombucha that you buy from the store basically has zero bacteria, basically. It probably has some, like a little couple of scraps, but not enough to make a significant difference in your probiotic, in your gut, or whatever. And it's expensive as hell as well. It's really overpriced, to be honest. If you make your own kombucha, that's a lot better. If you make your own kombucha, then it's actually pretty cheap. It's got a high bacteria content. If you made it yourself, okay, then it's good. Realistically, most people aren't going to make their own. So I'm going to put it in mediocre, actually, because the store-bought stuff's just complete garbage, really. Yeah, it's better than drinking like soda. I would drink store-bought kombucha still, but it's just not that good compared to other probiotics, you know? Next up is water kefir, which is actually quite similar to kombucha in terms of like how it looks, how it tastes, blah blah blah. You can also make this at home. It's really cheap, actually. If you want to do probiotic stuff for cheap, all you need is a clean water source. Don't use tap water, it'll freak up the bacteria. You need the kefir grains, which they only cost like $25 or so. And that's it. And sugar, of course. You just put sugar, water, and the grains all in a jar and leave it to ferment for a few days. And bada bing, bada boom, you got yourself some probiotic drinks. How probiotic is it? The ones at the store, on par with kombucha. The ones you make yourself is better, obviously. I'd say it's on par with kombucha in pretty much every way, really. It can, depending on what strain you use, kombucha and kefir, both water kefir, they have different bacteria that can have different benefits. So optimally, you'd consume both. Optimally, you can consume a very large range of probiotics because they all do have different bacteria, and you really want to get the biggest variety of bacteria you can. Don't just keep consuming the same one over and over and limit yourself, you know? Anyway, next up we've got miso. Now what the hell is miso? Miso is made usually from fermented soybeans, although you can get it made from fermented chickpeas as well. It's primarily used, it's a Japanese thing obviously, most people would know that, and it's primarily used for like cooking. Everyone knows miso soup. They basically grab this frickin' moldy ass beans, put it in a bowl of hot water and swish it around, boom, you got yourself some soup. If it's put in boiling water, it no longer has any probiotic benefit, by the way, because the hot water is just going to kill all the bacteria. But theoretically, let's just say you're consuming it kind of like a sauce on the side, or you dip your bread into it or something like that. How probiotic is it? It's okay. It's actually not that good. It's actually probably less than these two, in terms of bacteria, but there are other benefits to it. So for example, it helps with the digestion of the bean, whichever bean you're using. It breaks down like the anti-nutrients in it, such as like the phytic acid and goitrogens or whatever. It can even break down some of the pesticides and stuff that are in the bean, which is quite good. So if you're eating beans and you're fermenting them, then that's, if you're going to eat the soybeans or chickpeas anyway, but you made them into miso, that's great. That's better to eat them like that. Yeah, sure, the bacteria content's not high, but it also has K2. It has an okay amount of vitamin K2, but not super high. But K2 is really hard to get. I also forgot to mention that with the other ones. Pretty much all fermented foods have vitamin K2. These two in the mediocre tier probably have basically none because vitamin K2 is fat soluble. The cheese probably has a ton of K2. Kimchi probably has a mediocre amount of K2, but it still has some. Pretty much everyone's not getting enough vitamin K2 unless they're taking supplements or consuming foods like beef liver or fermented foods on the regular. So, yeah, okay. If it was just going off the bacterial content alone, I'd put it in the mediocre or even the bottom tier. But considering the other benefits that are brought on by consuming this, I'm actually going to put it in... I'll put it in average. Yeah, average. It's not really that good. The things I was saying, the vitamin K2 content and the reduction in phytic acid, making the beans more digestible. Realistically, if someone's eating like a big bowl of beans, they're not gonna be able to eat a big bowl of miso. It's because miso is really salty. This is something you can only really have in a small quantity. So those benefits kind of dampened. It does taste nice though, and it does have some benefits. Yeah, it's okay. And it's pretty easy to get unpasteurized miso at the store. Now, natto or natto. Natto. That's how you have to pronounce it apparently. Someone was having a cry about that I saw. What is it? In case you didn't know, what the frick is that? It's a Japanese fermented soybeans. It's a little bit similar to miso in terms of what it actually is, but in terms of the probiotic properties and nutritional properties, it's quite a bit different. It's basically better in every regard. In terms of vitamin K2, it's got a ton of vitamin K2. It's actually got the most vitamin K2 of most foods. It is a different type of vitamin K2 compared to, for example, beef liver and whatnot. It's not the same type of vitamin K2. Nevertheless, it is still good. And this, unlike the miso, you can actually have a pretty large quantity of this, and you can also make natto with chickpeas as well. It's got super high vitamin K2. It helps break down the beans, making them more digestible. And the problem is getting it is kind of hard from what I've seen. You can probably pick it up at Asian stores, or if you live in Asia, you can probably get this anywhere. I also forgot to mention this with miso as well. They are made with soy usually, and that's a downside because of in case you didn't know, soy has phytoestrogens. Some people like to debate and say phytoestrogens aren't actually bad. I disagree. I reckon they are bad, to be honest. But just make it with chickpeas and it's grand. If you're on the soy grind boy, probably put it lower. But if you make it with chickpeas, it's actually probably one of the best things. It's got the bacterial content. It's not as high as some of the others, to be honest. But even just the K2 alone, which is produced by the bacteria, is really good. And when you eat those bacteria will stay in your body and actually help produce vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 is very important. I didn't say this, but vitamin K2, it's heavily associated with a decreased risk of heart disease. It's super good for your body. It helps metabolize calcium. It helps metabolize vitamin D. It keeps your circulatory system healthy. Pretty much everyone's deficient in vitamin K2. I would recommend some people make themselves some chickpea natto and consume that on a daily basis. Maybe not daily, but on a regular basis. You don't need a large amount of it. You can just have 2 ounces or like 50 grams a day. All right, next up, we got pickles. Now pickles, 99% of the pickles you buy aren't even going to be probiotic at all. They're just going to be, this is like a misconception people have. They think, oh, pickles are probiotic, they're fermented. Nah, most of the time they're not. They're just freaking cucumbers floating around in a jar of vinegar water, basically. So for that reason, put them in straight ass. But if you did make your own pickles, like by putting them in a saltwater solution and lacto fermenting them, I probably would put them a bit higher. I'd probably put them at average. So if you're buying pickles from the store, in general, they're going to be pasteurized to begin with. So even if they are fermented in salt water, they're not going to have no bacteria left. And if they're not fermented in salt water, it's just zero. Sauerkraut, kind of what I was just saying before, most of the time it's pasteurized. You can get unpasteurized sauerkraut, but even the ones in the store are not that good. If you have really good probiotics and they're in a jar, like the jar's going to burst open because the bacterial fermentation is going to produce gas and it's going to pop the lid and crack the jar. So if it's in a glass jar, hell no, that's not doing anything, boy. It's just not working. If you make your own sauerkraut and actually ferment it properly, it's okay. It's actually not as high in probiotics as any of these. It's significantly inferior to kimchi. From my experience, kimchi's got a much higher probiotic content than sauerkraut. And sauerkraut doesn't taste as good either, in my opinion. The sauerkraut just it's mediocre. It's not the worst thing in the world though. It's pretty cheap to get cabbage and just ferment it yourself. I put it in average, but barely average. Like it's almost, I'll put it in mediocre. It's mediocre for sure. If it's not store-bought, if everything on this list is not store-bought, you can move it up quite like at least one level. Now, sourdough bread, boom, straight ass. It has no probiotic content left because it's been baked. The bread's been baked. There's no probiotics left. Sorry. I hear a lot of people saying that, oh, but it's probiotic. No. No probiotics to be found here, boy. But there are some benefits to the probiotics beyond, the actual bacteria inside it, Like the bacteria, they break down phytic acid and anti-nutrients inside the bread, making it more easy to digest. A lot of people who have digestive issues with bread, when they have sourdough, they don't have these digestive issues. So for that reason, it's good. And it can produce some vitamins. And allegedly, that even though the bacteria are all dead, they can still somehow benefit the gut. I haven't seen any good explanation for that, though. So I'm putting it in the bottom tier category. It's not even there's no actual live bacteria in it if you're eating it in bread form. If you ate the raw dough that's been fermented, it would have probiotics. How much? I don't know. No one's studying how much bacteria in raw dough. No one's studying that. Although I would try it. I actually want to do an experiment like that and try eating fermented dough, specifically fermented buckwheat flour, like a sourdough buckwheat flour. And I would like to try that out, and I'll get back to you guys on that when I do it. Alright, the final two. I'm saving the most common one for last. But the next one's tempeh. What's tempeh? It's something vegans eat because they can't eat meat, basically. Now, it's like fermented soybeans. It's high in protein, and it's fermented. I've never eaten it, and I probably never will. Like I was saying before about soy, I'd recommend not eating soy. And also, another thing I forgot to mention about soy, the phytoestrogens, but they're also usually sprayed with glyphosate, which is actually one of the worst pesticides you could possibly consume. It's like terrible for your health, terrible for your hormones. It's like Alex Jones said, they're turning the freaking frogs gay. I'm pretty sure that's what he's talking about, was glyphosate. So yeah, big shout out to Alex. He's the best. He's right about everything. That's sarcasm, by the way. That guy's crazy. But anyway, tempeh. The probiotic content is pretty low, and most people, as far as I'm aware, they cook with it anyway. So it doesn't even have any probiotics left. I'm pretty sure it does actually have some K2 content. The K2 content is comparable to miso. I put it on the same tier as miso, but behind miso. And especially behind it, if the miso is made with chickpeas. I haven't ever heard of anyone making chickpea tempeh, although it probably is possible, to be honest. And the last one, yogurt. Yogurt. Everyone has yogurt. Everyone talks about the probiotic benefits of yogurt. Yogurt probiotics, blah, blah, blah. I always hear people banging on about it. Yogurt compared to kefir, it's like comparing a freaking Ferrari to a horse in a cart. Like, what the hell are you doing, boy? Yogurt is just sucked. It has no probiotics, really, in comparison to kefir. Compared to some of these other ones, though, it actually has a decent amount. And it can vary massively. Like, some yogurts have basically 0 probiotics in them. Especially those sweet yogurts here. If you're buying them sweet, like vanilla yogurt, chocolate yogurt, bro, stop the cap, boy. That ain't got no probiotics in it. Eat some really like an organic Greek yogurt. Pretty much all yogurts are pasteurized. Even if the yogurt is made with raw milk, it still has to be heated to a certain temperature to activate the starter culture. So you're losing that benefit of the raw milk's digestibility and potentially causing acne. If you're going to consume pasteurized dairy, you should have yogurt over milk, because yogurt will still, because of the bacteria content in it, yeah, there's not that much, but it will still help in the digestion of the food. And as a result, it'll give you less issues with acne. And it's not that bad. It's just, I see no reason to consume yogurt over kefir. Kefir is better in every way. Kefir is more watery though. That's the only, it's not even really a downside, but I mean, some people might like the thick consistency of yogurt. Kefir is way, 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 way higher in probiotics. Pretty much 100% of the time it's higher in probiotics. Kefir is higher in K2. It tastes better in my opinion. It tastes better. It tastes more fermented as well. Maybe people don't like the fermented taste, but then what the hell are you doing eating fermented foods then? It's average. It's got more probiotics than sauerkraut potentially. It's just outclassed by kefir really. There's no real reason to have it over kefir. Yeah, so I think that's about it. Well, if you enjoyed this list, let me know in the comments. If you disagree with anything on this list, actually write in the comments. I'll actually, if your comment has good information, I'll actually pin it so other people can see. If you have any suggestions for other tier lists to make in terms of nutrition, let me know. I'll actually do them. That's about it. Goodbye.